sure Jay will be coming here in just a minute. Does that go? Okay. We'll stand up to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if everybody will stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Everybody, good job getting used to the new time and getting here. That's great. As we go through the agenda tonight, obviously, please keep in mind our mission and our vision and our core values as we make decisions throughout the meeting.
I give a little rundown.
Yep, and Joe was going to give them a...
Joe's got a new format. You do have paper copy too, however you want to do that. The format's the same as what I have on the screen. You know, if you just click on anything, you know, I click on minutes here, it's got an attachment. You can click on the attachment and it'll open it to your downloads. When we get into the business, it'll have all of my usual general information is there in the quick summary, and then as well as my recommendation. And if you ever want to go back to the whole agenda list, you just click this agenda over here, and it goes back to that.
So
Notes new, so feel free as we're going to even ask questions of how do I get to that again. But you do have paper copies with you as well.
Just so I can say, if you get behind or lost a minute or something, don't be afraid to say, I don't know where we're at. So, all right. The meeting's called to order. We do have enough for quorum. Hearing of delegations, I see none, so we need a motion to approve the agenda in front of us.
Motion to approve agenda.
Thank you, Brent. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Andrea, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda approved. Communications to the board. At this point, I don't see we have any. So we'll just, the consent items you should have received in your packet, earlier, last Friday, Thursday or Friday, and then there is a couple additional here. And Lisa, did you want to mention anything?
On the one that's on number 2 there, the invoices, when it comes up, there's one right under Amazon Capital Services, and it says 3,013 for science fair supplies. That's not all science fair supplies. It's an issue I'm having with the system. It's science fair supplies, it's Barkhouse, which is the FCCLA organization, and then it's also a lot of band equipment. So I can get a breakdown if someone wants it, but it's more than just science fair. And then the other thing was that of what I gave you tonight on the additionals, there's an extra sheet which is just the Visa payment, because I couldn't get it to print with the bills. So it has them all, there's a line there, that's everything below, and after that is the payment for February. And I thought that way you can see them all, since I couldn't get it to print with the actual bills. It's an automatic or electronic thing, so you can print with your checks or something.
Joe, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Just that our finances continue to look good. Part of my report, I'm going to review kind of where we're at on those with our expenses and our revenues. Revenues continue to exceed our expenses, which we anticipated for the year, and I'll review that a little further in my report.
Okay. Any questions or discussions? If not, we need a motion to approve the consent items.
Motion to approve the consent items.
Thanks, Tom. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Todd. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent items approved. We'll move into the superintendent's report.
So when you go to it, again, in the general information, it's all listed, but then this attachment, as it usually is also in there if you want to look at it that way, however you want to do it. In our financial update, there's a chart in there that's also on the screen. The chart below shows our revenue year to date with the percentage of the revenue for the year to date. The chart also compares those revenues and expenditures to the previous 4 years. Our total revenues highlighted in yellow year-to-date is $11,822,507. Our total expenditures, a little over $10 million. So you can see there's about a $1.6 million difference between those two. We won't finish with the $1.6 million surplus. That'll continue to close, especially as we get to salaries in the summer. But we are expecting maybe a small surplus this year. Expenses are up from the previous year. That would be expected. A couple of reasons for that, just simple increases in salaries. We also added fifth sections in a couple of elementary grade levels that we didn't have previously, as well as the student success coordinators at the elementary building. So there were some additional expenses that we would expect for this year. Going into the second page, list the top general fund sources, which is something we always do, just to get an idea of where they come from. So our general fund, over $5 million of that comes from local property taxes, where state foundation aid is a little over $3 million of that. That would be different in every district. And it has to do with your evaluation. So if you're in a property-rich district like we are in Algona with lots of valuable farmland, we generate more, so then we get less state foundation aid. If you're in a property-poor district that maybe has a lot of residential, your property taxes would generate less in comparison to state foundation aid. But that's just a way to look at that. Continuing through the top general fund sources, instructional support surtax, salary improvement program, tuition in teacher leadership, state aid. The rest are all categoricals, including preschool aid. So kind of where our money comes from and how we get it. The majority of it is from property taxes, which you would expect. Little health insurance update. Lisa and I met with Holmes Murphy, our insurance brokers, a few weeks ago to start our renewal process. They've provided us with our initial review data that estimates our health insurance going up $510,000 for next year, which is around 15%. Our new money with a increase of 2% SSA would be $390,000-ish. So that those numbers don't align very well. So we'll look at some program adjustments to our health insurance plan. We have an insurance committee that's made up of staff members from around the district that have already met once. So we'll meet again to talk about what possible program changes we could make. Some of those could include our traditional plan deductible increasing from $500 to $750, which would be closer in line with industry standards, probably still below it. Also moving our high deductible health plan to a network plan, actually offering both. That would have a savings to it as well. So those are just some examples. We really think with some plan adjustments, we can reduce that close to zero. Some other things that we have is our insurance side fund, which is around $2 million, also generates around $70,000 per year in interest, that we can absorb some of it, just simply because of that fund and the interest that we are making. Legislative review, there's a lot of bills out there, and some of them will, they won't make it through committee or even make it through a House, but a couple to highlight. House File 1, this bill would allow non-public students to participate on public school teams if the non-public doesn't have that activity. House File 10, this is a bill to correct a timing and calendar issue when it comes to disillusionment, which we did that a few years ago. House Senate Bill 30 would require all students to pass a naturalization test to graduate. House Senate Bill 31, that's the start date. Once we've talked a lot about here the last couple years, August 23rd or the first Wednesday. I've also seen some proposals written that the preceding Monday to August 23rd, which this year would be like the 18th. House Senate Bill 32, school silent periods require public schools and charter schools to display the national model, the state model, and require public schools to start the day with 2-hour minute of silence. Some of these, I'm not able to provide an explanation of why that would be one. House Senate Bill 33, online assessments, allows any schools delivering instruction over the internet to administer any state self-assessment online as well. And then there's a few others on there we can take a look at. But those are some of the legislative things. You know, there's a lot of those. There always is a lot of educational bills. There's probably not as many big ones as there has been the last few years, but still things that certainly have an impact on us. Probably the biggest impact in legislation for us right now is the SSA increase of, there's one proposal of 2%. We hear rumors now of maybe a 2.25 coming. Neither one of those will cover our expenses.
Any questions for Joe in his report? All right, hearing none, then we'll move on to the next in our agenda here. As soon as I roll it down, we got Mr. Heesh with us tonight to talk.
I'm just here to talk a little bit about special ed. Again, I did it last year, and it's my turn again. I have given you a cheat sheet. So this is my special education cheat sheet that I'm using with boards. Some of the things in there, it's, in special ed, we talk a lot of acronyms, a lot of things that people don't really understand. So this kind of walks you through some of them. One of the big things I want you to look at is levels of students. That's the weighting of students. So when we have a student that's weighted as a level 1, it's 1.72, so we get an extra 0.72 for that student. Level 2 is 2.21, so we get an extra 1.21, and then a 3.74. And as you go down, they take more support as you go through those. Some of the changes into the AEA that's affected us this year is that unless it's a 3-year re-eval or initial, we have to request them looking to see if we need to change levels of our students. So the teachers will tell me that I've added a bunch of services, I'll go in and look at the IEP and then make a decision about whether I work with the AEA about does that student need to bump up a level or they stay the same. You know, that's just some of the changes that's happened. Anytime we'd have a manifestation determination for a student, that's where a student has been suspended for 10 days or more, it's now run by us, no longer run by the AEA. So there's some changes that has come about that we're working on, working our way through. The staff has done a great job working on getting things in with parents. There's a new parent portal, so parents of special ed kids will be able to get in and see in real time their IEPs, which is their individual plans, and as progress monitoring is put in for their special instruction that's being delivered to them. So that goes live at the end of the month. It's kind of been a mess to come out from the state, and we're working through that. We will send a mass email out to our special ed parents on the 14th of February, so they're aware that it's coming and things like that. So this is kind of just my little cheat sheet that when you hear these acronyms and the things that you'll kind of be able to understand what we talk about in special education. So the second document, is there any questions on that one? The second document I have has a little more data with it, and seem to spend a lot of time dealing with data. So this shows our special ed official count numbers from 2019 through 2024. In 2023 and 24, we added Laverne. You already had part of Laverne's numbers because you had the middle school, high school, just added the elementaries into it. And then you can see, we do an official count in October, and these are the numbers off them, and then you can see how it's generated the level 1s, level 2, level 3, and what does that additional weighting generate for us for special ed.
So John, looking at 2024, our additional weighting is 187, correct?
Yep.
So what that means is we received funding for an additional 187 kids as part of our special ed weighting.
And you'll see those numbers are different because it depends on how many level 3s you have, how many level 2s. Some of the kids are not full-time with us, so that's a percentage. So that's why you get those odd little .64s and things. As you go down the document, then the past 3 years, so the state of Iowa did a new special ed. The old legacy system is gone. The new system is Achieve. And the original, they put all the students in Achieve in 2022, 2023. I'm starting to look at our data more as not the amount of students we have in special ed, but the amount of goals we support. So all of these areas are also in your cheat sheet, and they're the goals that you can have in special education. The ones with the asterisks, the communication, hearing, physical, those are done by the AEA. So communication is mostly speech. Those kids are still counted in our system, and we still have them in our system. And as we get new speech kids coming in, I put them into the system, but we're not doing the instruction. The instruction is done by the AEA through us in our buildings. So you can see what our biggest ones are. You know, it makes sense that they're reading, that they're math. Writing is a larger one for us as well. I mean, those are the areas that we have our goals in. So I'm just starting to collect data on this because I think it's just a good thing for us to look at. Is our goals areas really changing drastically, or are they staying pretty consistent where we're getting them out of in there? So just a couple other things on there as well.
John, can I stop you 1
Yep.
minute? You know, because so what John's trying to do here is take our goals, math, for example. In the last 3 years, we had 113 math goals, and then we had 103, then we had 108. Those are pretty comparable. Reading are pretty comparable. Adaptive behavior goals have went from 29 to 51 in the 3-year time period.
And adaptive behavior will be like social skills, community living, things that kids would need for everyday living outside of the school setting.
Thanks, John.
Then the bottom part of that just shows that how you get into special ed is you first start with a disability suspect. So we ask the AEA to come in and do some assessment on the child to see if they really have a disability, because this is about disabilities. You know, it's not really about do they want to do the work or not do the work. Do they really have a disability which is causing this gap that we have? That can lead to an educational evaluation report. And then out of that, we make the decision of whether the child is eligible for special ed services or not. And you can just kind of see up to date what our numbers are as we look through those. And that fluctuates in any given year. You know, some of it fluctuates in the classes that are coming in and, you know, just where we're at. You don't get as many of those at the middle school, high school as you do at the elementary. So you'll see it's by proportion weighted heavily towards the elementary and the younger grades. So then the last one I just put on there is because I thought it was interesting. We pulled out of our student information system in 12-13, we had 2 ELL kids, and now we're over 106. So I just thought that was an interesting, and you know, 12-13 years that it's grown that much, that population has. So
That was some of the data I provided in the memo either last week or the week before. I think an even sharper incline on that graph is 2019, which is the year I started. We had 43, and we had a 0.5 FTE teachers working with our English learners. Now we have 106. Actually, today that number wouldn't be 106.
no, it's about 115 or so.
Yeah, and we have 4.0. So we certainly see a different amount of students, and how we're supporting them is very, very different also.
Yes.
Excuse me, did you say 4.0?
Yeah,
FTE
3
for the-
teachers and an associate.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So I just thought that that's an interesting fact that we gotta look at. So do you have any questions off of that?
I'm just curious, you might not know this, but Joe, you might not either. So the 187 with our staff that's assigned to special ed and our costs as a district, and, you know, then you have the special ed deficit and stuff, but what, is 187 times 7,000 enough to cover our expenses for special
Yeah,
ed?
really good question, Brett, and the answer is not even close. And that's one of the problems in the educational system in Iowa right now, is these weightings of 172, 221, and 374 are like 20 years old. So the result is we've weighted the support needed for these kids the same over a time period where the cost to provide the support has increased. The result is most districts in the state of Iowa have a special ed deficit then,
What is our special ed deficit?
1.6 million.
So, I mean, we're getting, what is that?
You know, you take that number times $7,600 is roughly.
Yeah, I know, so yeah, I mean, 1.5 million is what we're getting,
Yeah,
roughly,
yeah,
from the state, and we still have, so it covers half of our cost.
Yeah.
Is basically what you're
Yep.
saying.
And when the law was originally wrote in, the federal government was gonna cover 40% of it. And they're not,
they don't, right,
they're not even close to that.
yeah.
So, you know, when that was written a long time ago, they were gonna cover.
And it's really always been that way, that the federal government really has just never paid their special ed cost. So, but yeah, special ed, you know, providing support for some of our students who need it the most, it certainly costs money. And, you know, I would advocate that it's not funded appropriately. It's not funded the way it was intended to be either, which is part of the problem.
And that's why we look very closely at the weighting, and if students move up in weighting and things like that, you know. You might think that adding more para minutes to a student automatically moves them up in weighting, but it doesn't. One that does is transportation. You have to do specialized transportation and they're a level 1, that bumps them automatically to a level 2. You know, but there are certain things that they just go through, and takes a little more prodding and, you know, a little more discussion about, do we think that child needs to be weighted higher or not?
One of the many things that John does is to work on how can we become efficient in providing the support. One of those things is how many of our students are Medicaid eligible, and of which is 22, and of those, how many are we collecting money back on, which is 6, and working to make that number more than 6. And
We're hoping to be up closer to 10.
yeah, and it's not an easy process. There's a lot of steps to it, which is why John's working in that. That closes some of that gap that we're talking about. You know, it's not like we're talking thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but anything we can do, I think, is an important part to eliminate that debt.
And our billing company will say if you get 6 to 8, you're doing really well, out of those 22. So it's just a pretty good process to go through and see, do they qualify? If they do, then we have to get consent and a lot of other things, you know, IC-10 codes and just other things we have to get for it, so.
What is our total budget for the year roughly? 12 million? 11 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, entire.
So, I mean, special ed takes up a fourth of our budget. I mean, if it's $3 million a year,
Yeah, you know, and you gotta figure an eighth of your students-ish are in special ed, so, you know, an eighth should be special ed, it's twice as much of that.
We have roughly, I think, 246 in special ed. That would include some speech too, so.
When he showed these italics, you know, so speech, again, we don't provide that service, so there's not an expense to us for that. Physical, this would be PT, mostly, maybe all PT, again. We don't provide that service, so there's not an expense to that. Same with hearing. We don't provide that service, so there's not an expense to that. The AEA provides those too, if you were wondering.
With changes to the AA, will that go away, or how, what's?
Good question.
I'm not real familiar with what
It's not
is
supposed to.
happening down the road. Okay.
With special ed, the change for next year, all services are to be provided by the AEA as they are now. We just get 10% of the dollars. That has to be used towards special ed. So we're supposed to continue to get the same services.
Okay.
Which is tough because they can't find staff either.
Yeah.
So it's really become tough for them as well.
Good information, John, thank you.
You will also be approving our district developed service plan tonight, and that's how we serve our students in special ed. And that gets updated every 4 years, 4 or 5 years. So I actually will be doing 3 of them this year, and you're the first one I'm doing for the first of the 3 districts, so.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Yep.
Thank you.
John. All right, we'll roll into old business, and we're looking to approve the second readings of some board policies.
Second reading of board policies, very few changes on any of those. 210, board policy 210.2 is a board meeting time change. So we'll be approving, moving our board meetings from the second Monday at 7 o'clock to the second Monday at 5:30. There are no changes, as all of our policies align with the IASB recommendation until 401, the equal employment opportunity, where we need to add the address of the Civil Rights Commission. And then in board policy 4016, limitations to employment references, need to add volunteer language, as well as 5019, updating our just terminology, not policy, in chronic absentee insurance.
And I think 102 as well, maybe, Joe, the equal education opportunity.
You are right. 102, equal educational opportunity needs to update to match the ISB recommendation, which has specific names of the equity and affirmative action coordinator.
And all of them have been updated, like you
Yes.
talked, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, need a recommendation then to approve the second reading of these board policies.
Make a motion to approve the second reading.
Thanks, Todd. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thanks, Andrea. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Second reading's approved. New business, we need to set a public hearing.
We need to set a date for a special meeting for our budget hearing number 1. I would propose March 24th at 5 p.m. Again, this meeting is required as part of new legislation. We had the meeting last year as well, but that was the first year that you have to have a meeting outside of your regular scheduled board meeting. So there's an additional public hearing that is now required as part of the budget process. At the March board meeting, I will bring to you draft budget, where we're at, including tax rate. We could talk about that, discuss if it's in a good place or if we need to make changes to it. And then we would have a public meeting, budget hearing on March 24th. And then we would come back at the April board meeting, have another public hearing and approve the budget as presented.
But this one's that extra one. that
This
we're-
is the extra one
You
that
have
we
to
need
have
to.
separate date.
approve for. Yep.
That date might not work for me, which is fine, as long as
Okay.
you have a quorum.
Okay,
I just looked, it works for me. We get back Sunday from a vacation, so we'll
Okay.
be here Monday.
I can do it.
That's the day after, yeah, get back after the spring break.
this
So
will be.
Monday after spring break.
That date will
Yeah,
also
Monday
be
after spring
after everyone receives their
Yes, like last
tax
year.
notice, thank you, in the mail, that will say, you know, this is what your tax rate for the school is this year, and then it will say, this is what your tax rate would be if they didn't change, although that's misleading, because if they do change it, they they assume a 10% increase, and then this is what their proposed tax rate is. So when you get that, it's going to say the school is going to raise your taxes 13%. The reality is 10% of that is just an assumption on valuations. 2% of that is the rollback is increasing 2%. We don't have control over those two things. And the proposal of our tax rate is actually going to be a 1% increase, which is good information for all of us to have as people receive those, that the school is not raising taxes 13%. The proposal and the draft budget that I'll bring you in March is a 1% increase.
How could we communicate that prior to?
Last year I made a video, if you remember that. Maybe that would be valuable again, so I can just show them on the screen then, this is what it says, but here in fine letters, it says the 10% is an assumed increase, 2% is the rollback increase that everyone has, and then the school increase is actually 1%, 1 point something. So maybe do the same thing. I know we made the video last year because that was the first year we had sent out the tax notice and we were nervous about how it would be received. I don't know if it helped, although we had thousands of views, so maybe it did.
Well, we kind of sent it out after everybody got theirs. It was like the front side was misleading, turn it around, and it made a little more sense, but.
And then, we had, I think, 2 people at this hearing, so.
So, a lot of it's based on evaluations.
Yep.
Property tax, we have no control over that.
You don't have
We
any
talked
control
about
over
that at our agenda
valuations.
review. Why is it that ours is going up? Is it just because we have more property than other districts and?
No, that 10% assumed increase is what the state does on this notice for every district in the state. So every school district in the state, it's going to say they have at least a 10% increase. Then the other 2% comes from all of our residentials. They're not taxed at 100%, they're taxed at 52, something along there. That's going up 2%. Again, that's something we don't have control over. The 1% is what ours is going up. And the reason for that 1%, Brent, is because of reorganization. Our uniform levy was decreased below 540, and there's a 3-year stair step back up. And so that increased.
So do we have to set it at 1%?
No, we could set it higher.
I'm just asking for my own understanding. So per pupil cost from the state, $7,000. I know it's more than that, $7,600, $7,000. Our property tax makes up a percentage of that, and then the rest comes from the state money,
Yeah,
right? To fill the
it does
gap.
make up a percentage. It takes $5.40 times our assessed value.
Yep.
That gives us a certain amount, and then you gotta fill the bucket, and the state fills the rest of the
So
bucket.
why would we want to increase it if the state would supplement the rest? Like, why would we increase it?
Well, that 540 is what we don't have control over, and
Yeah.
it's going up. That's what increases ours.
Because we're not at 540 right now.
We are not at 540.
Because of our reorganization, it was lower,
Yeah.
and we're getting back up
And
to that
that's, and that's the
540.
1% that you're talking about?
Yes. Trying to simplify this as much as we can. There's other variables, such as a cash reserve levy, which we have, although we're lowering that. Management, which we have, we're about the same in that. Really, with what our uniform levy is going up, and us ending at a 1% increase, we're lowering our asking. The part that's going up is the uniform increase back closer to the 540.
Well, as we continue to discuss it throughout the budget process, and,
Yeah.
hopefully people will start understanding as we keep explaining it too.
And this hearing that we're setting is a great time to have these types of discussions, as well as the March, when we bring a draft to you guys. That's a great time to have discussions. So we set the rate at a place where the board's comfortable.
Is the 10%, is it 10% or more with that assumption, or could it be 8% and some are 12? or-
They just build that tax notice with that 10%, which creates a lot of
Very confusing.
confusion. It's just how they build that notice.
When you open that letter, very confusing.
It's an assumed 10%.
It's not only ours is on there, the county's,
Yeah.
city, everybody's is on there, so there's a lot of numbers, and it gets even more and more confusing sometimes with that.
There could be a reduction. You know, your assessed value could go down, and they still are gonna give you that notice with that assumed 10%.
I highly doubt it.
This is capitalism.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, we're looking just to set that extra, and we'll continue to talk about it, but that extra date, public hearing date for March 24th at 5 PM.
I
If we-
make a motion to set the hearing date for March 24th at 5 PM.
Thanks, Andrea. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. And so far, we believe there's just be one gone. We believe we'll have a quorum, right? I think we're all feeling we will. All right. We've got a motion and a second for March 25th at 5 PM. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing date set. I need to approve a couple of Algona Foundation board members.
This is something we do annually. We appoint some Algona Community School Foundation members are appointed by our Board of Education. It takes place because the Algona Community School Foundation is not a private foundation, so they must have a certain number of their board members appointed by our Board of Education, which is its supporting public organization. And this is done to ensure that the foundation doesn't ever operate in a way that isn't supported by our board. So the foundation members we are approving are Bill Farnham and Ben Kern. I recommend we approve those two.
And they've been current members, right? We're just kind of
Both current, longtime members, yeah.
Yep.
Make a motion to approve Ben and Bill as the board members.
Thanks, Todd. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Board members approved. Northwestern College, a memorandum of understanding.
The Education Department at Northwestern College is seeking our collaboration in placing teacher ed candidates in our district. So this would be student teachers to work here. And anytime a college or university looks to place student teachers, we sign an MOU with them. We haven't had Northwestern College students of late, so this is a good, student teachers in our building is always valuable. And I think a good opportunity for us. So I do recommend the approval of the MOU with Northwestern College.
Need a motion to for approval.
Motion to approve.
Thanks, Brent. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Thanks, Tom. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. What John talked about earlier, approving the district developed service delivery plan.
Yeah, so this is something we always have. We always have a district developed service plan, service delivery plan in place. This is in regards to special education in the district. You're just required to review it on a 5-year basis. So Mr. Heiser has worked with our staff in reviewing it. The format revolves around 5 questions, and they are what process was used to develop the plan, how will service be organized and provided to eligible individuals, how will caseloads of special education teachers be determined and monitored. That's probably what we use in this plan the most. How will the delivery system for eligible individuals meet targets identified? There's an attachment. This is the attachment of our plan, and in there are some changes that are in blue. So you keep in all of the original. This is originally when it was created, and then these are some blue changes that they've added. One of those changes is, how do we provide special education services to our students at the alternative location? Because we didn't have that in our previous plan. How do we provide special education services to a homebound student who isn't able to come to school for a period of time? So a couple procedural changes like that. in the plan. In our caseload matrix, so this is how we determine if the special education teacher has too many students on their roster and that it's balanced out. You know, you can't just simply use the number of kids because their cases might be weighted differently. We went through the weightings with Mr. Hesier previously. So this is the matrix we use to score that and make sure everyone is balanced as best that we can. Any questions on our service plan?
I feel like we're updating them as necessary as we do with the rest of the
Yep.
policies. So, looking for a motion then to approve the DDS DP. We'll make it short.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Was that Brent? Yeah. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Todd. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. And moving into open enrollment.
We have 2 open enrollment applications that have met requirements for approval.
Motion to approve open enrollments.
Thanks.
Second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Open enrollment's approved. Approved few resignations.
We have 2 resignations, Gerald Zeller, bus driver, and Cheyenne Studer, middle school girls basketball coach. I recommend both of these resignations.
Motion to approve resignations.
Thanks, Brent. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thanks, Andrea. Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resignations approved. I believe we have some contracts.
We do. Gina Jones, Lucia Wallace, and Garrigan, teacher associate, and Courtney Stroman, middle school girls track volunteer. Also, Justine Hellman, high school art, and Caitlin Fischels, high school counselor for next year, replacing 2 of our early retirees. So we've done some interviewing here the last few weeks, where we hired Mrs. Hellman and Mrs. Fischels, and we have some elementary teachers we're interviewing today and tomorrow as well. So hiring teams have done a really good job, and we've found some awesome candidates. Mrs. Hellman is currently the high school art teacher at Humboldt, and Mrs. Fischels is a high school counselor at Ankeny Centennial, and her husband will be moving to Alabama.
Motion to approve new contracts.
Thanks, Brent. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you. We have Andrea. Well, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? New hires approved. All right, at this point, we would look to move into closed session to evaluate the professional competency of an individual. And do we have to read the whole thing?
Do you need a motion for that?
We need a motion, then we need, yeah.
Motion to move
Roll
into
call.
closed session.
Okay, and do we have a second? Jay did, thank you, and then we'll lead a roll call.
Owen,
Yep.
Limbaugh,
Present.
Davis,
Yes.
Balaji,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Bensy.
Yes.
All right, we are moving into closed session. We'll give our others here a chance to leave, and you'll be able to shut the camera off and be done.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Will you guys let me know when you're out?